Hello, and welcome to our webinar, A Comics Conversation. I'm Heather Booth, and I'm an editor at Booklist. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or if you need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We'll do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable them on your screen, please look for and click the Show Captions icon on the toolbar mentioned earlier. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of them at any time by selecting Caption Settings. And finally, Booklist expects all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates this standard of behavior, including engaging in any form of harassment, may, at the discretion of the organizers, be immediately removed. We have a wonderful event planned for today, and we'll begin with brief introductions from each creator about their upcoming book. So let's take a moment and meet our panelists. We first start with C.S. Jennings, who is the illustrator of over 24 books for kids. He's the author of Animal Band, Hello Texas, and Too Close Panda, and he illustrated the Texas Library Association's Blue Bonnet 2020-2021 Master List book, From an Idea to Disney, How Imagination Built a World of Magic. He also works in the animation world as an animation lead for Richard Linklater's A Scanner Darkly, and assistant animation director on the director's film Apollo 10½. He was assistant animation director on both seasons of Amazon's Undone. C.S. believes in being part of the Kidlit community and is involved in the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, an organization he's been a member of for over 16 years. A Texas native, he makes his home in Austin, where he bikes and hikes, exploring the hill country for inspiration. See more of his work at csjennings.com. Welcome, CS. Please tell us about the very punny Pet Shop Racers.
Hello, everybody. CS Jennings here. Good to talk to you. We changed the title of my book from Too Close Panda, the camp panda who's too close to Whoa Panda. It just came out. So a little bit of bio update. I hope everybody's doing really great. I'm so excited to be with Booklist today to talk about my new graphic novel series, Pet Shop Racers. Book 1 and Book 2 are out in October. And I'll give you a little bit of kind of behind the scenes of Pet Shop Racers. Pet Shop Racers comes from this inspiration here. As kids running cars over couches and under shelves and across living and kitchen floors, really, I wanted to create a story where my characters were in that sort of world. And so Pet Shop Racers, that's one of the parts of inspiration. So let's talk about Pet Shop Racers. So our primary character, or our main character, we meet him, his name is Ham. And he's a hamster, and he lives in a pet shop, and he loves to spend his days eating, sleeping, and eating. But at nighttime, all of the animals escape from their cages and head to racing and hamster balls across the pet store. Ladies and gentlemen, start your hamster balls. So he loves to race. They love to race. As you can see, he has a reason that he loves to race, because he loves to win, but also it's where he finds his value. One of the things about Pet Shop Racers is that each race really is not only in fun and wacky and adventurous, each one of these races has a character arc within it. What is it that the character is experiencing here or wanting here? So for Ham, we see very early on, it is friendship, it's acceptance. And that's a boa constrictor giving him a hug. Don't worry, the boa constrictor is just giving him a hug. But then enter the ferret, Shelby. Shelby is a good-hearted, wonderful, to sort of Ham's grumpiness. Shelby is this wonderful, excited dude. He was so much fun to create because he just is such a great little guy. And Ham has his values and what is good for everyone. And of course, Ham's value concept being everybody as friends, right? And the way that they come together are through the races. So we're racing hamster balls, and then we discover next door, we discover the hobby shop, and they jump into hobby cars. They race them around. The first time that they race, it's not so successful. So that's Pet Shop Racers, book one. Book two. Book one is really about that, finding your place within your friend group. What happens when somebody shows up who threatens that? Book two, his sister returns, and she's just really his hero. And so he has to find the balance of this new best friend that he has, but then his sister shows up, who he idolizes and loves. And today, I'm premiering the cover reveal for book three, called Need for Speed. And we've got a brand new, so the third character to enter the pet shop rides a motorcycle. He's a stuntman. So yeah, so they're funny. That's one of the things that I think is the chief. Sorry, here I've got a cat meowing in the background. If you hear them, they're reminding me it's time for lunch. So racing excitement, lots of adventure, lots of laughs, and also, like, really my goal with each one of these, and as an author illustrator, is humor, heart, and healing. And that's what I'm hoping from that each one of these books will bring into the lives of children. So that's Pet Shop Racers. I look forward to sharing more with you in the panel.
Thank you so much, CS. They're very fun, super colorful, really fun characters. Next, let's meet Greg Foley. Greg didn't know what he wanted to be when he grew up, so he never really grew up. Just like Dex, who we'll meet in a moment, he's always wanted to be the world's best great ever at something. So he tries his best at being lots of different things, like an author, an illustrator, designer, director, cartoonist, New Yorker cover artist, teacher, inventor, and dad. Along the way, Greg has received numerous honors, including the Charlotte Solitaire Award, the Art Directors Club Gold and Silver Awards, a Grammy nomination, a Guinness World Record, and his work has been exhibited in places like the MoMA, the Centre Pompidou, New York Public Library, Yale's Beinecke Library, and many more. Greg lives in Austin, Texas with his family. Thank you so much for being here, Greg. Please tell us about Dex Dingo, world's best, greatest ever.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Greg Foley, and my new series is Dex Dingo, World's Best, Greatest Ever. The first book is Inventor, and the new book, which comes out in a month, is World's Best, Greatest Ever Archaeologist. In these books, Dex Dingo it's kind of modeled after my experience being half Filipino, half American fourth grader. He's in the fourth grade, and his best friend, this is Dex. He's in the fourth grade, and his best friend is Buckley Bat. In Austin, we have a big population of bats, which people adore, and they watch them under the bridge at Town Lake. And so his best friend is a blind bat. Each of the books starts in media res with this, "How did I get here?" in the middle of his adventure. And Dex gets an assignment. Basically, he, like most kids, he never gets to do what he wants to do. When it's time to read, he wants to go out and play. When it's time to go out for recess, he wants to stay in and draw. And then his teacher gives the class an assignment that basically says, show and tell if you can choose one job and explain to the class, dress up and explain to the class what your work is. And so Dex, like many kids and like me, he kind of overdoes everything. And he loves making lists. So he makes a list, and this is what inspired the series of some of the best jobs ever. And on it, he has these jobs that are different than any of his classmates are saying. They're saying like lawyer, doctor, soccer star. And he puts down artist, architect, archaeologist, astronaut, explorer, hypnotist, inventor, pop star, chef, secret agent, superhero, monster, king, ninja, actor, cowboy, many crazy jobs that he wants to try and be the best at. And so in each one, things work out a little bit too well. In the first book, he becomes an inventor. He creates nanobots. It works too well, and by the end, he doesn't really want to be an inventor anymore. So he goes back to his list, and in the next book, he wants to be an archaeologist. And I want to read just a little sample here. This is the chapter 0, starting in media res, the adventure. Chapter 0, where am I now? It's a great story, and I'd love to explain more. But if I can't escape this trap right now and get out of this collapsing temple, thud, crack, dunk, crumble, the whole world could turn to gold. And then his shoes, which he invented, the world's fastest, laziest shoes, also talk. And one of them says, but wouldn't that be great? Even my best friend. And the other shoe says, that would not be great. Wah, thunk, watch it, oof. So where am I now? You could skip ahead to find out. Buckley is turning to gold. And here he sees some ghost shadows. But you'll miss the part where I become, whomp, toss, the world's best, greatest ever archaeologist. So in each of these adventures, which are discrete adventures, Dex tries to be the world's best, greatest ever at a new thing. And each of them features some real history and facts. In this one, oh, I'm sorry, I don't actually have the advanced copy yet. In Archaeologist, it actually lays out some of the greatest historical discoveries. And he thinks, well, I've got to top that. And in the series, he creates his very first invention is an infinity room with his MSMP3, which is basically a super magical permanent power pen, and I made some of my own here. He creates an infinity room, and in the infinity room, there are infinite doors of possibility. It's like infinite closet doors. And when he thinks of something that he needs or a place that he wants to go, he can enter the infinity room and find the right door and the thing that he's looking for. And so what I'm hoping with the series after Archaeologist is to go to another adventure and then keep going down the list. And the beauty of lists is you can always change them. So that's Dex Dingo, and I hope you guys get a chance to enjoy it. I am looking forward to the new school year and doing a bunch of school readings, which is my favorite thing to do.
Thank you so much for sharing, Greg. Dex is a really fun character. So many exciting adventures, and I love that super long list. Lots of things to look forward to. We're now going to hear from Jarrett Dapier. Jarrett is a Chicago area librarian and the recipient of the John Philip Imroth Award from the American Library Association for his work exposing book censorship in the Chicago public schools. He is the author of several award-winning picture books for children, one of which has faced several censorship attempts. He is the author of the graphic novel Wake Now in the Fire, which will be published by 10 Speed Graphic in 2026. So glad you're here, Jarrett. Please tell us about Wake Now in the Fire.
Hello, everybody. I'm very glad to be here, and I'm very thankful that you all are here. Yeah, I'm the author of Wake Now in the Fire, illustrated by AJ Dungo, which is coming out with 10 Speed Graphic this February. It's available to pre-order now, so I hope you'll consider doing so. And if you're curious about the picture book that's faced numerous censorship attempts of mine, that book would be Mr. Watson's Chickens, which is published by Chronicle Books, illustrated by Andrea Sarumi. That's a book that has committed the grave sin of showing a queer relationship that showing a queer relationship in the context of a book that's not about the queer relationship, but is about two men with an overwhelming chicken problem. And yeah, it's faced censorship attempts, but and I am sorry to report that some of them have been successful recently in Alabama. But the reason I mention that is because it ties into the book I'm going to talk to you about, Wake Now in the Fire. So this is my graphic novel coming out, and it is, as the tagline goes, a story of censorship, action, love, and hope. It is a graphic novel based on true events that occurred in Chicago in 2013. Those events being the Chicago Public Schools sent out a full directive to all heads of schools. And keep in mind, there's about 600 plus different schools within the system. The heads of schools were directed to gather up all copies of Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi, a wonderful graphic novel, one of my favorites. If you haven't read it, please do. And they were directed to gather up all copies in libraries and classrooms and bring them to a CPS department because that title was no longer allowed to be read or even collected in any of the schools within the system. The inspiration for writing this graphic novel and this story really came, I've been working on it for almost about 10 years. I am a librarian and I work with children currently, sometimes with teens, but the first half of my career as a librarian was with teens and as a teen librarian. So I was very aware as it happened minute by minute of this event taking place in Chicago and the censorship going down because teens took to social media in 2013 as it was happening to both report to the public that CPS was trying to ban Persepolis from all schools, but also to inform the public about their action they were organizing to fight back. And that was a major walkout and protest at the corner of Addison and Western, just near Wrigley Field, the week that it happened. And that protest ended up attracting not only about 80 participants, but WGN News, the Tribune was there. Even the BBC and Al Jazeera reported on it eventually, and it really shamed and embarrassed the Chicago Public Schools and made them walk back a significant part of the ban, though they did keep part of it intact, which is still, I still think I think it's still in action or still active as we speak, that part that they kept active. But this is the story of the students who fought back. And it's based on my reporting, which started as a research paper when I was in library school. And for that research paper, I gathered a lot of primary source interviews with teens who were directly involved in organizing the protest against the banning. And as I researched, I just kept coming across more and more amazing serendipitous details, one of which being the main school where all the students did the organizing, which is called Lane Tech High School, also hosted a banned books club organized by students previous to this event going down. It's called the 451 Banned Books Club. And they became part of the protest. They also organized their own library sit-in the following week. And this is the story of how the event went down. The characters are all based on my interviews, based on real people, but are also composites of many teens I've known over the years who have talked to me about their feelings about censorship. And so I started working on it as a graphic novel after I took a class on comics and realized, wait, I could turn all of these many voices into a story, and it should be in graphic novel form since it's about the censorship of a graphic novel. I really hope you'll check it out. I'm very proud of it. And as you probably know, we are in a total hellscape of censorship currently. And I guess sadly it's coming out at a very relevant time. I was working on it before everything went down in 2020 and 2021 with Moms for Liberty, but now hopefully it stands as something that people find comfort in and also some inspiration in as we all turn to fighting the book banners and censors right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jarrett. It's such a great story of teen advocacy. And finally, we are joined by Miranda Munt, creator of Muted, Volume 1. Miranda is a Seattle area-based graphic novelist known best for their webcomic Muted and for co-creating Lovebot with their wife, fellow artist Chase Keels. Munt studied 2D animation at Vancouver Film School and has worked extensively as a freelance illustrator, layout designer, and graphic designer. Muted Volume 1, published by 10 Speed Graphic, is their most recent graphic novel. Tell us about this gorgeous new book, Miranda.
Cool. My video. There we go. Hi everybody. Thank you for having me. So yeah, Muted Volume 1 is now available, and Muted Volume 2 comes out in October. So yeah, originally it was a webtoon original that came out in 2019 and ran from then to 2022 with 125 episodes. And I am very grateful to have the opportunity to work with 10 Speed to bring it to a print version where I did all of the layout redesign to bring Camille's story to a new audience. And Muted is about a witch named Camille Severin who starts off the story, as you can sort of, well, the term muted has a actual term later in the series, but she starts off very sort of reserved and quiet and emotionally muted as she's dealing with a lot of repressed memories from her childhood after a really traumatic fire that took her mother and her twin sister that no one figured out who started the fire, and is now living with the matriarch of her family, Athalie, who is a very overbearing aunt. And so it starts off with her having to come to terms with she's going to have to do a sort of coming of age ritual, which all witches in her family's position are meant to do. But the story really unfolds as she discovers more about herself and more just like about the world, and how a lot of things that she thought were normal in her very sort of like oppressive and restrictive family are actually not normal. So she meets a lot of different witch families and gets to experience a lot of different thoughts and perspectives, and begins to learn the truth while also being hunted down by a demon that very much wants to kill her, and she doesn't know why yet, but you eventually learn why. Volume 1 is very much laying like the groundwork to establish the characters, and then Volume 2 is when we're really off to the races as far as the plot goes in, and then just dives into her identity and all this like family emotional turmoil, and just a magical witchy time. And that's all
Short and sweet. Thank you so much, Miranda.
Mhm.
At this point, I'm going to invite everybody, myself included. We're going to turn our cameras on so we can have a fun conversation about all of these great graphic novels. A few nuts and bolts questions had come in, so I wondered, Jarrett, would you put your book in YA, and would you put it in nonfiction or fiction?
So it should be cataloged in fiction.
Okay.
So we like to say it's a story of censorship, action, love, and hope based on true events, but it's definitely fictionalized.
Super helpful, thank you. So opening it up to everybody, what initially made you interested in comics as your format, and what, after you had your first endeavor in drawing comics, writing comics, what kept you coming back? What are the things that you love about this genre and this format?
Well, being a being an illustrator and a visual person, I got hooked on comics basically because, things hit me visually very fast. I was not a confident reader in class when it was just prose. And so comics was sort of like reading in disguise for me. Um, I just I just gravitated immediately towards anything with a visual that could surprise me or convey emotion, the facial expressions and things like that. And also being I think naturally I was always like interested in design details and things like that. And so I would just like gravitate towards Peanuts and the Sunday comics and stuff like that. And then I started getting whole books of them every chance I got when I was allowed to like pick books and things like that. So it started with comic compendiums, and then as I got older into the superhero comic books and things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a, I do sometimes wonder about, I have kids. We have never had a paper delivered to the house with the comics that they remember. I wonder, so now it's good there are more entryways into the comic format than some of us might have had as kids. Miranda, you have some experience with that. You want to talk about comics and how they chose you, how you chose them?
Yeah, for sure. I mentioned in the bio how I went to school with animation, and it was just because, like Greg said, it's like just like a very visual, but like it was the visual and also like the sound and movement of animation that I was really drawn to. The downside being that animation takes a lot more people, a lot more time, and it's like, and I just like had all of these stories that I wanted to tell, and like that I wanted to get out there like as quickly as possible, like just share them and get them out of my head. But it's also sort of a situation where this might not be necessarily the best analogy, but I like to think of it as like we're how in movies you have musicals because people start singing because the words themselves aren't enough. Like that's how I feel like with comics, like prose themselves isn't enough for me. It's like you need to be able to see all the characters like experiencing that emotion like with them. I think is like a whole other level of like visual attachment than just the words can get across. And yeah, and it's also just fun to draw. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, go ahead. No, you're
Um, but I was gonna, for me, I had the same sort of thing with Greg. I had some dyslexia when I was a child, and so reading was not my thing, and early on, but pictures were. Like I drew and drew and drew. And so I was doing comics really early. I mean, one of the things about Pet Shop Racers is I was drawing trucks jumping over things when I was a little bitty guy, and creating characters. Character always was the thing that was really interesting to me. I love what Miranda just said. Like it's the music, right? The drawings. We just take it because I've written prose too, and I'm like, oh no, I have so much I'm doing. So yeah, I think that's really brilliant. But yeah, to you, Jarrett.
also in reaction to what Miranda said, I just want to doubly sort of platform that. It's the sort of grand, explosive quality that's possible in comics that hooked me as a kid. So, Heather, to what you said about the Sunday comics, I first fell in love with comics because of the Sunday comics coming to our house in the Chicago Tribune every day, and I would follow Calvin and Hobbes all week long, and then be so excited about the Sunday edition. So I was really reading it, the way people will read web comics today, where like a new one each day or a new one each week. But when I started getting the Calvin books, and I still have all of my originals that my son reads lovingly, they're currently falling apart. But the fact that it was really Calvin and Hobbes that hooked me because of the expressions, the like explosive sort of grand Guinal sort of emotions that he was always expressing really spoke to my heart as a kid with ADHD who was very hyperactive and also felt things very, very deeply, whether it was rage or love or sadness. And and then after, I wasn't exposed to any other kind of comics until after college, when I read Mouse and Persepolis, and then a little bit farther down the line, March Book One. And these all really, I still loved. Once I found those, I started seeking out graphic novels for adults, but and for teens. And when I started working with teens, just seeing how much they love them, and I started reading as much as I could. And at that time, I was also writing plays for teens based on young adult novels. And so I did a lot of work with dialogue, and I came from a theater background. So when I saw Mouse and Persepolis in March, I wanted to sort of create in that vein for teens, something socially conscious and speaking to the moment, um, of our culture and politics, but also using comics as the format, because teens are explosive and have big emotions, and I remember that, and I think comics are a great medium for that.
Well, I've asked one question and I feel like you guys have answered like six. So thank you for that. You're all making this a very easy interview. Gosh, it's such an interesting format, and I love how you're talking about like the connection to theater and the connection to musicals and music and all of this. And I also want to say I think that Calvin would be a big fan of both Pet Shop Racers and Dex's Adventures. Super adventurous, both of them. I wanted to ask CS and Greg, speaking of the two books that are here, or the two series that are here on the younger end of the spectrum, what do you think makes what are the essential elements of making a graphic novel or a kid's comic really sing for that kid? It sounds like everybody here has had those experiences as a young person of finding a comic that resonates with them. Is it just like a magical inspiration, or how do you narrow that down? How do you target that?
I think the essentials, like for a kid to follow the story without getting lost, and the pacing, clarity is so important. Simplicity and clarity. The relatability is really the thing. Like, obviously, when I set out to develop Dex, I went back and I just started reading all kinds of other work that I hadn't yet read, and just found that I I still in I still inhabit that emotional place of my childhood, like every day, around that middle elementary age, before romance and stuff like that. There's quite a bit of embarrassment still, but pre that, it's where I still easily live and breathe. And so that kind of relatability and to just get into that mindset is such a nice place to revisit. On top of that, then there's the silliness and the surprise that has to happen. And that truly is the magic of what graphic novels and comics can do. Just like other art forms that Miranda mentioned, and some of you guys who come from animation. I don't technically come from animation, but I've worked with a lot of animators and filmmakers and things. There are things that you can do in film that you can't do in other mediums. There are things you can do in music to wake up the ear that you can't do in, other things. And to take advantage of picture and word, which is I'm going to leapfrog here to a question you were probably going to ask about picture
Yeah.
book histories and things, is when you marry pictures and words, it's a unique art, and it's a unique recipe that can't be done in other formats. And so you rely on that a lot. Like, well, what should happen next? Well, what will wake me up?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. I think relatability is really, I think that was a word that I had too. Um, I think there's a beautiful opportunity within the graphic novel they're having fun and really enjoying it, and the things that bang are color and lots goofy. I mean, I draw cartoon animals. I always have. That's all I'm going to do. And not that there aren't adult stories with cartoon animals, but that sort of expression and goofiness, the that one thread, right? That's childhood. But then there is the thread of childhood that is feelings and emotions. And like I was not this kind of human when I was a kid. I was extremely introverted. The kid I was on the swing set playing Moon Monsters. I was a Moon Monster and my friends were, and was like, what are you talking about? Sneaking my teddy bear in my backpack to school. So that relatability, like here's this thing, we're having fun, but again, when I go back with Pet Shop Racers, what I am trying to do is do those emotional chords of when you're angry or when you're sad or feeling alone, and then what do you do with that? So I think that's what resonates too. So I think, and I love one of the things about Greg's books are the things that he's put in there where he actually plays with the form of the book, where you hold it up and you can see through the page. And but yeah, I think that's the real key, is the fun. But I think there is then what's happening underneath that relatability. Every kid is going to see themselves somewhere, right, in some character, and I think that's the beauty of these books. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I love that, the finding yourself in this book. Um, Jarrett and Miranda, so talking about the, honing in on the emotional content in the picture books or the comic books for younger kids. That's still something that's happening in books like those that you write for an older age group. How does that change expressing emotion um, in visually, when I don't want to say teenagers or adults have more complicated emotions, but there's definitely a more of an awareness of the emotions that are going on. Sometimes it's happening and teenagers don't know why it's happening. How do you handle that in comics for people on the past childhood?
Yeah. For me, like again, it's sort of that note about relatability. Because with Muted, it's an interesting case because it's technically, because Camille is 21 and she's technically, so Muted as a series is technically classified as an adult series, but it has this sort of thing where relatability, because a lot of bits and pieces that come from like my own life and people that I've known, but in this particular case is like I can still consider it, even though it's an adult, it's a sort of coming of age story because like she's discovering a queer coming of age story because a lot of people like myself don't even realize that they're queer until they're like in their 20s or older. Like I didn't realize I was a lesbian and until I was 21, and so that's an entire like new. You have to basically come of age again because you're like realizing, like, oh, everything I've thought about my life up until this point is wrong, and so I have to reevaluate well, like what this means to me and like how this is going to change everything. Um, because like like the expectations of like you know getting married, having a kid, blah blah blah, like that's a, and that's a, well, not out the window for everyone, but out the window for me. That was not something I was interested in, and the full awareness of like, oh, I don't actually have to do that. And so but yeah, so it's like relating just to people finding themselves and like also expressing their emotions. I try to do it in a very, I would say, lovingly melodramatic way. I think everyone's emotions in Muted, despite the name, are very loud. Like the whole thing about Camille is that she's been suppressing her emotions to this point now that when they come out, it manifests in a very loud, alongside her magic, in an explosive way that she can't physically contain inside of her body. And and just like from readers over the past, uh how they've mentioned like it helped them a lot deal like with their own family problems and stuff, and getting into a sort of nitty gritty kind of deeper emotional family stuff that I think a lot of uh that are a little too heavy for kid stories to be able to touch on in a way that's not just like sad, but can be cathartic in an older person who's already sort of gone through these things and just sort of healing those wounds instead of currently going through them.
It's beautiful.
I really love this question, and yeah, Miranda, I agree that was beautiful, and I agree with a lot of that. I remember very clearly what it was like to be a teenager and what it felt like, what my feelings were like. I also really deeply care about the feelings and emotions of teens, um, as a father, as a writer, as a reader, and as a librarian. Especially because I think the adult world, the culture at large, really dismisses and gaslights teens, and doesn't show any respect for their emotions. What you'll often hear is, "Oh, that's not what you're really feeling," or "That's not what you really think," instead of listening to them. And what I love about, so for me, I love the complexity of the emotions that can be explored, through telling stories about teens and young adults. And particularly in Wake Now in the Fire, for example, there's this character on the bottom. Her name is Aditi. And it's hard for me almost to look at this cover. I half love it. I mean, I 100% love this cover, but it's hard for me to look at this bottom without getting teary-eyed, because this character starts out as a very high achieving, she is a high achieving daughter of Indian immigrants, and she discovers through the book censorship battle and seeing the emotions around it, and also the fact that a book that she loves so much is being censored, especially a book that has a protagonist she identifies so much with. She ends up going on a self-reflective journey where she realizes she's gotten away from the person that part of herself she really liked about herself that existed before she became a freshman in high school. And when she conceded to, or sort of like surrendered to the pressures of high achieving, get to college, and basically abandoned her life as a reader. So that's why this cover really just touches me, is because this is her on the bottom getting lost in a book. And it's when she really struggles with, like, who am I? What have I become? And how could I have abandoned that girl I remember so clearly who just loved to get lost in books and stories? Um, I just love that I could explore that storyline with her, where it's, in a middle grade book or younger, it would be a lot harder to do.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, and her arc is so, I think, relevant to so many teens who, especially now, I have a senior and a sophomore this year, and already second day of school, I'm seeing the pressures on our teens are quite significant. And, rediscovering those things they love, comics, reading, art, whatever it is so important. She's a great role model. So we see her journey unfold through your words, but also through the art. And some of you have illustrated, there's lots of illustration happening here, but creating comics and creating, comic style books seems like it's a lot more of a collaborative writing process, creation process, than perhaps other forms of writing. I wondered if anyone wanted to comment on what that process is like, working with other creators to put the whole book together.
I can't speak on that so much as far as music is concerned, but I can with Lovebot, because that I did that with my wife, and that was a very sort of 50-50 process where we sort of wrote the whole thing together, like basically replying to each other as characters. And then the adaptation into the webtoon, it was sort of me taking everything that we wrote and just sort of dissolving the bits down per episodes, and then I would do the initial thumbnails. She would do the lines and the background art and the flat coloring, and I would come back and shade everything, and then we'd wrap it all up in a bow and throw it online for everyone to see. And so it was a very I think the more collaborative 50-50, the better. And yeah, it's fun. I think it's a fun thing to do.
Especially if it's with somebody that you
It
have
is,
a
especially with my wife. Yeah,
a
all of a
great
sudden it was my wife.
relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I illustrated another series, one series for Capstone, and then a standalone for Capstone that I didn't write. It was another author's manuscript, and it's 100. Number one, with the graphic novels, there is an opportunity for collaboration with writers and illustrators to bring in a project to publishers that doesn't really seem to exist within picture books unless you're married or you're a family in some way. And when you're illustrating somebody else's work, which I've also done picture books and things like that, but with the graphic novel itself, there is so much that happens once you start to draw it that's not in the script. Specifically, those emotion points and the comedy points. Like I tell, because I'm author illustrator, I've told both the publishers that I'm writing books with. I'm like, my script isn't locked until I've done my first draft of illustration because I don't know everything yet. But working with another writer and anyone who's worked in the publishing industry, really there is the go-between of my editor and my art director. That is the collaboration is there more on that with those two human beings than it is with the writer. We'll get notes back on character design, or we'll get notes back on different elements of the book, but it really is you're working in sort of the art world of it. And once they give it back, and man, I think I haven't I've written one book that somebody else illustrated, and I loved it what they did. But it is I would imagine that it's here's this thing that's your heart, and you're like, here, please draw it and do good. So but yeah, for the professional side of that collaboration, there just isn't much communication with the author that doesn't come through the editorial and art director channels.
Yeah, I would echo that. My first, Mr. Watson's Chickens is very much written like a comic. So I was very happy that I was paired with Andrea Sarumi, who is a comic artist as well as picture book creator. And I thought they did amazing work turning it into a sequential art picture book with all the sort of, possibilities that comics can present. But it was the same thing. It was really mediated between us by our editor Taylor Norman, and thankfully I didn't provide a ton of art notes, and I did that because I know that artists don't love them, but also B, I want to know what they can create. So I hoped that my art notes sort of like served up a ball that they could spike. And so, I would say, page turn cross section of the house where we see the chickens getting up to no good on every surface and in every room. And then Andrea went to town with that. But for Wake Now in the Fire, I would be very curious what AJ has to say now that he illustrated this, because his first book, In Waves, was author illustrator, incredible graphic novel, another one that makes me cry. And now I wonder if he thinks, hell no, I will never work with a writer again. Because I think it's a long story, and I really wonder about what he thinks about it now, because we really were sequestered. We didn't communicate at all. So I would say my main collaborator was the editor, Jeannie Seo, and it was incredible collaboration. I loved working with her, but she was the go-between, and I dream of a day where I'm close with an illustrator that we can work together on something that we then present to a publisher, but not there yet.
Interesting. Yeah, it feels very cohesive. So success on that front. Yeah.
Well,
Can I have? Oh, go for it.
well, I was gonna say I like my character Dex tend to over control things. Like I designed the font to be Dex's voice. I've done all of my book designs and layouts myself, which, much to the chagrin of the in-house, art directors. They're kind of like, well, you can take my credit off this because I really didn't do anything. And the thing is, it sort of sets me up to, like, I hunger now for more collaboration because, you know, left to your own devices, the most instrumental help that I do get is from the copy editors and editors who have an objective eye and can point out these glaring gaps and things that I just haven't caught because I'm over controlling things. And so I always welcome that and tend to take almost every piece of advice, you know, pushing me just a little bit farther than I had, you know, thought. But it's like with publishing nowadays, the way it is, it's so hard for us to make the work fast enough in order to make a living. And I was telling CS this the other, you know, month. I am trying now to find new ways of collaborating, you know, because I think you kind of have to get more things going all at once in order to just keep up with your livelihood.
I agreed.
It's
And
so interesting, just like that collaboration, we think of it as a creative component, but it's also a very functional efficiency component as well.
Yeah, super. I mean, I can't believe artists who also do all of their own coloring because, you know, this was, I mean, I did on all my picture books, you know, 11, 12 picture books, but for a graphic novel, it's one of the things that I knew I would never be able to achieve. So I took a long time to get the guts to actually try and do it. And when, you know, having a colorist attached was one of the things, it was like, oh, yeah, thank God. Thank God. You know, and it's not easy. You know, I've been a designer for decades and decades, so managing creative teams is a skill that I developed. Being a teacher, letting kids make mistakes is a skill that I developed. Working with a colorist was kind of revisiting that and saying, like, well, it could be a little bit more like this. But
Yeah.
when you find the rhythm and they're just sailing with the color, it's like, oh, thank goodness, this is just coming to life. It's like, here's some more pages, bring it to life.
That's really
Boom.
neat. So
Yeah,
yes, I think
I can't believe that there, you know, that there are so many artists who also do their own color. It's
Yeah.
such a specialty.
yeah, I wanted to do my own color. I do have Flatter. I send my pages to someone who does the basic colors, but then I want to use the color to guide the eye. I want the color to be good. I have a palette that I use. I also use color stories throughout the book and trying to explain to someone who doesn't know what a color story is, which is each scene has a particular tone, right? So it's it's crazy. So I work in spreads, so I can see the whole thing. I can see my position. I can see how things are moving. And I do want to drop a quick collaborative note. Rachel Stark, who was my editor on these 3 books at Disney Hyperion, was such a partnership. Like that was collaboration. These were the longest things I'd ever written. And Rachel was so good about identifying those arcs. I wrote one during COVID, which is just like bananas. It's so dark. It's like, no, this is not for 5 and 8-year-olds. But I really loved just that process of what, and it's like, oh, it's a hamster and it's a ferret and it's another hamster, and you're like that. They don't. What emotional stakes could they have? You know, what kind of stakes do they have in the story? And Rachel was just really amazing at that. So, Miranda, are you coloring your own stuff?
I was gonna say I did have someone do flats, but then I would do the color. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta do flats.
I did also have another note as far as like the collaborative part goes, because like another job that I have is as a layout designer, which is where like here is a couple, but it's like, but I'm taking other webtoons and like I did the layout design myself of putting all the panels there, but I'm taking other people's webtoons and putting them in book format. And like, and so that's a collaborative process at the same, because it is like it's sort of in a way a sort of script adaptation where, because like especially in webtoons, because you scroll you can have these really long beautiful vertical panels, but then on a print you're constrained to the page, and I'm like where I have to be like, hey, this isn't gonna work. You're gonna either have to redraw this or I'm gonna have to chop some stuff up. What do you want to do? And so that's a sort of different sort of collaborative puzzle. And then on like as far as aspects of control, I agree, Greg, that I also kind of have that problem where like I want to do everything, and like I'm doing a little side comic right now where I'm drawing for something someone wrote, and like that was fine. I was, able to translate that script easily, but then like I put all the word bubbles down, and they were like, I'm like, here's a rough draft, and they were just like, oh, okay, that's great, but don't worry about doing the word bubbles and stuff because we have a letterer that will do that. And I was like, oh, what, what I do the lettering. That's a thing that I do, but if sure, okay, if you insist. So
Cool.
it's fun, the different levels of things where you have to like release control. Basically, it's a skill you have to learn for sure.
Yeah. Well, I have one more heavy question, and then if there's time, we're going to go into the lightning round. This came in from somebody on the call, but I think it's something that a lot of us are wondering about now. And if any of you would like to talk about why you think that visual storytelling and comic books, graphic novels are more likely to be targeted for censorship, and any tools you can recommend to support the freedom to read. And while you collect your thoughts, I'll just mention a couple tools that the American Library Association provides. We have Unite Against Book Bans, which anybody can join. There are toolkits for fighting for the freedom to read as a library patron, as a member of the community, as well as a librarian, and that's at uniteagainstbookbans.org. And then there's also the Freedom to Read Foundation, which is ftrf.org. That has a lot of resources. If you in your library are experiencing book challenges, the Intellectual Freedom at the American Library Association can help you out with that as well. So
Yeah, thanks, Heather. I'd be remiss if I didn't dive in first to also say, it's the Office for Intellectual Freedom, so OIF.org. And I want to
Not
mention.
like I forgot my colleague's department.
No, there's a lot of acronyms.
Yeah.
But for everybody who works in libraries, especially, I want to just emphasize that every little thing that strikes you as wrong, whether your gut is telling you like that was really weird, but is that a full censorship incident? Should I report that? Do it, because Office for Intellectual Freedom records all of the events, and it helps not only for tracking, big hard censorship news and situations, but also it helps researchers, and it helps, I think, authors and everybody try to understand the power of soft censorship. Soft censorship being, the book that's not collected and put on the library shelf, or the author who's disinvited for this reason, but we all know the real reason. Stuff like that is really important to track. I think it's the most insidious and most powerful sort of pathogen right now, undoing a lot of freedom to read in America, is the soft censorship. And so, if a teacher's like, no, don't read that one. Could you read one of your other books, that doesn't involve queer characters? That should be noted at the Office for Intellectual Freedom. They won't say like, get out of here with your little crap. They won't. They want to know. But to your question, so I once read, I don't know if anyone else has read it, but there's a Japanese historical manga called Barefoot Gen, and it's by Keiji Nakazawa, and it's based on his experiences surviving the atomic bomb in Hiroshima, and the devastation he witnessed, and it's just like, it's brutal. And I read all 10 volumes, but at the end of the first one, which is when the bomb hits, I sobbed harder than I have ever sobbed while reading a book before. Certainly, I've read lots of prose books that have made me cry, but like this was as ugly as it gets, and I was so shocked. And it reminded me of Raina Telgemeier had a comic about her own experience reading that book when she was 9, and saying to her mom or dad, I couldn't believe something that's just a comic could make me feel this way. And her parent responds, nothing is just a comic. And that experience really, I think there's something uniquely powerful about graphic novels and comics that I don't know if we'll ever be able to truly describe, but I think because Barefoot Gen was a comic, and it hit me on such a deep level, I think that censors and people who are afraid sense that, and they know it, and it scares them that their kids may have real, authentic, big feelings that they'll have to sort through. That, and it's easy to censor them because you can flip through and find two people naked and then be like horrors. Because it's visually really easy to do that without having to know the context or read through it to get to that part. And so that's like the easy reason. And I think the hard reason is also it's incredibly powerful, and that scares a lot of people.
Yeah, thank you. That's thank you for all of that. Anybody else have any want to comment on that?
Yeah, just to sort of piggyback off what Jarrett said is like I do think, we've said how comics this whole time is just like, the musical in a way where it's like a loud and expressive and visual medium. And so it's like when people who are scared or, hateful and and are just wanting to point out things and just, all of that stuff. But it is a lot easier and more impactful to like, as opposed to like reading a sentence, be like, look at this book where it says the line, these two guys are kissing, versus the actual picture of two dudes kissing. And then so they could be like, look, because it's visually more impactful, because that's the whole point of graphic novels, is the visual medium is having that impact on people. So it just, has that immediate effect. And instead of, taking time to assess why they feel this way, and maybe probably they shouldn't feel that way, they decide to try to ban it. So, but hopefully, that stops eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you all. Greg or CS, I'm sorry. Did you have anything else you wanted to add on that before we wrap up?
No, I think that was really well said. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Yeah,
I did want to note that, just to be clear, CS, Greg, and I are not brothers. We're not triplets, and we're not brothers. I also, this is me.
My brother and me, what's going
on? Collaboration, you guys can.
Yeah.
I'm not actually bald. I just shaved for this.
Just shaved for the event.
Yeah.
Being totally bald.
No, I didn't get the memo. I would have shaved if I knew that we had to shave our head.
Oh gosh. Well, thank you for helping us end on that light note. I'm afraid that's all the time we have today. We'll do the lightning round next week and just join us all again. Thank you all so much for this beautiful, wonderful, informative, energetic conversation. It was really lovely to hear about all these new books and about your backgrounds, and why comics are such a great format for all ages. Tomorrow, attendees will receive an email containing links to today's video recording and a certificate of completion. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view past archives and register for upcoming webinars like those that you see here. You can also find out about the latest webinars on our social media channels, like Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Blue Sky. Relevant to today's conversation in particular, Booklist's 2025 Guide to Graphic Novels is here. This library's this year's special issue features articles on how to combat self-censorship, that soft censorship that Jarrett mentioned, graphic memoirs for teens, readers' advisory tips, a cat manga, and so much more. The digital issue is free and open to everyone on the Booklist website, so head over there and start reading now. Finally, thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. A huge thank you to our special guests, Jarrett, Greg, CS, and Miranda, to our sponsor and their partners, Penguin Random House Library Marketing, 10 Speed Press, and Disney Publishing. I know there are some questions hanging out in the Q&A. We'll be sure to pass those along to today's panelists, and we thank you so much for joining. This concludes today's webinar. See you next time.